To provide more analysis, we're joined from Washington by Ambassador John Seaman, former American diplomat and managing partner at Total Impact Capital. Good evening to you, sir, and welcome to In Focus. And Mr. John, let me start by asking, given the drone strikes in the Strait of Hormuz, how fragile is the current US-Iran Memorandum of Understanding?
Well, thank you for having me, Mona. And I think the fragility of the Memorandum of Understanding is extraordinarily fragile. I don't think you could imagine an agreement that is more fragile, not just because of the Iranian insistence that ships leaving the Strait of Hormuz follow their route so that they can have established some precedent for having control over the strait, but also because of the explanations from the United States, particularly President Trump, threatening to go back to war at every little provocation. So it is an extraordinarily fragile agreement at this point.
But then there are still hope, since we're speaking about mediation that are still ongoing. Do you think the new direct communication channels over Hormuz truly prevent a wider military escalation? Do you think mediation would really would be able to de-escalate the situation? What do you think?
So I think there is hope. So I want to be clear. I don't think it's a given that the ceasefire and the memorandum of understanding will fall apart. But it was put together very, very quickly. It left most of the major issues to be decided later. So from the very beginning, it was a very delicate piece of diplomacy, and because there are forces in the region, on both sides, that are seeking to undermine the MoU, that makes it even more fragile. So obviously, the Israelis have been seeking to undermine the MoU with respect to its declaration of a stand down of hostilities in Lebanon. And I can imagine that on the Iranian side, there are a number of parties who would like to see the MoU ditched and the negotiations ditched. And I think they to the extent they have the ability to control drones and launch attacks, they have the power to put it in jeopardy.
Right, indeed. But then we're speaking about mediation efforts, and there have been mediation efforts by Pakistan and Qatar and other definitely regional parties. Do you think those trust?
Well, I don't believe that there's any trust in the relationship between Iran and the United States on either side, and that is much deeper than this current administration. I think there's a real lack of trust.
Why?
For a number of reasons. For one, the Iranians, for years and years, were party to attacks on American soldiers in Iraq through their militias. Two, they've supported Hamas and Hezbollah, which have done much to undermine any sort of progress with regard to peace with Israel. And three, they've continued to seek to build a nuclear weapon, despite assurances for years and years and years that that's not something they were looking to do. So I think trust is a commodity in very low supply on either side. And of course, the Iranians can talk about all the ways in which they feel the United States has undermined their trust, including, of course, an attack while we were in the middle of negotiations.
Yes, indeed. This is what I was going to ask you exactly. Do you think that the missing of trust is only because of one side, not the other? Because we, as you said, respectively, the United States made a strike on Iran in the middle of negotiations. President Trump always made statements that were very much threatening to Iran. Up till this minute, he's threatening to destroy Iranian infrastructure if diplomacy failed, or if they did not agree on some of the terms that were put. Now, do you think diplomacy still is Washington's and Iran's primary tool?
So whether it's its primary tool I think is an open question. But it's a necessary tool at this point in time because I think both sides, or at least large parts of both sides, really have been exhausted by the conflict to date. On the United States side, we've seen the conflict result in very significant increases in gas and diesel, which affect other prices in our economy. And that's made this war very politically unpopular. And on the Iranian side, they've seen a large part of their conventional forces degraded. And obviously, they've seen a massive investment in their nuclear capabilities degraded. And I think they would like to at least be able to rebuild their economy and their country. So I think there's an interest on both sides in finding a way out of this. It's just going to be very difficult.
So we're not speaking about peace as a primary tool, but rather an inevitable choice or option. Now, how does the internal political split in Tehran impact the actual fate of these high-stakes negotiations?
Well, it's not dissimilar to what exists on the United States side, especially with regard to its ally Israel. But there's clearly a group within the Iranian government that would prefer the conflict to continue. They feel they won the war. They feel they've gained leverage on the Strait of Hormuz. They don't want to give that up so easily. They feel there's a larger price the United States can and should pay to get the oil flowing again. And so that group, which includes the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, has a lot of influence and has the capability to undermine this peace agreement. As I said, to the extent they can launch attacks that aren't necessarily sanctioned by the civilian government in Iran. So I think it creates a very difficult situation in the same way that Israel having a different agenda than the United States creates a very difficult situation on the U.S. side.
And that's also a big obstacle that is being put here for this agreement to continue, for those negotiations to continue. And I guess an important question would be, how would the United States be able to balance between its the Israeli interests and the American interests?
Well, President Trump says often that he's focused purely on American interests. I think sometimes he doesn't exercise his judgment in a way that serves our interests. But our interest at this point, I believe, is in finding a way towards some negotiated settlement. And that, I think, is where the president is putting a lot of his effort. That's where Vice President Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio are spending a lot of their time. And I think the president has made clear to the Israelis that he will apply significant pressure. The United States has significant pressure to apply if he views the Israelis as undermining what an ultimate agreement.
Mm-hmm. As an investment expert, what are the immediate economic impacts of this Gulf volatility on global energy markets?
Well, we're seeing now, interestingly, energy prices have not gone up since this attack. In fact, they've gone down. But overall, over the last 4 more months, the energy prices have gone up both on oil and gas. And that's done 2 things. One, obviously, is it's raised the cost of using those fuels quite a bit, but it's also impacted a number of other fundamental supplies, like, for instance, fertilizer, which could have a real impact on the cost of food even a year from now, as the planting season is occurring now. And if the plants don't get their fertilizer, then we'll have a lot less harvest when come this fall, and a lot less food on the shelves come this winter. So the impacts of this conflict, I think, are only just marginally felt at this point. I think they'll be far-ranging, even if there's not a resumption of hostilities. And if there is a resumption of hostilities, I think the impacts that we've seen in the recent past will seem like child's play compared to the damage to the global economy and ongoing war will result in.
Right. Now, shifting to Lebanon, how do you assess the framework agreement that was signed today in Washington between the Lebanese side and the Israeli sides, mediated by definitely the United States? And how do you see this framework agreement applicable in terms of Hezbollah's position in Lebanon in terms of the Israeli demands, in terms of the Hezbollah's demand for complete and unconditional Israeli withdrawal. What do you think?
So you sort of put your finger on the major problem with this framework agreement. The parties to the conflict in Lebanon are not the Lebanese government in Israel, it's Hezbollah in Israel. And if Hezbollah is not party to this agreement, they have the capability to undermine it as they have done in the recent past at every turn. The only thing that will allow there to be the type of ceasefire that's necessary for the regional peace to progress is if the Iranians put pressure on Hezbollah to hold their fire the same way the United States needs to put pressure on the Israelis to do the same. So this agreement creates a playing field on which those things can happen. But at the end of the day, this agreement is not going to do much if Hezbollah is not restrained in terms of its attacks on Israel.
But let me here tell you a fact on the ground. Now, definitely Tehran has always vowed to never abandon Lebanon. But there is also one issue that Hezbollah is part and parcel of the Lebanese community, and it is in the south. Now, how would that agreement go on without involving Hezbollah in a way or another that would satisfy all parties on the ground and would really get into direct talks and lasting regional peace possible? How would that be?
So Hezbollah is not in direct talks with Israel. That's one of the challenges. And of course, there are significant reasons for that. Israel and most of the world considers Hezbollah a terrorist organization. And we have a common refrain that we don't negotiate with terrorists. Of course, ultimately, we were able to find a way to do that through mediators in Gaza with Hamas. And I think there'll have to be some mediation process to come to some ultimate solution with Hezbollah. And it completely destroy Hezbollah. But as you've pointed out, that they are a major player in the south, and completely destroying Hezbollah is probably a heavier lift than what the Israelis can do. So in all likelihood, the path to peace, the path to stability will require some sort of negotiated settlement between Hezbollah and Israel, backed by their sponsors, Iran, and in the case of Israel, their ally, the United States.
Yes, indeed. That was Ambassador John Seaman, former American diplomat. We thank you so much for those very special insights. And following his White House meeting with President Donald Trump, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte sought to project unity ahead of next month's NATO summit in Ankara. But Trump's renewed criticism of some European allies over the Iran conflict, coupled with ongoing debates over defense spending and burden sharing, has raised fresh questions about the future of the transatlantic alliance. Is NATO emerging stronger or more divided?